and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and we are on to reorganization, so we can take the positions one at a time and then shuffle seats at the end.
Is there going to be music?
Sandy, did you bring the music?
No music, sorry. Oh boy, he can.
Okay, do we have a nomination for president?
I'd like to move Joan Weideman as president.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Passes 5-0. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll have to do all the voting, right, or are we shuffling?
No, I thought you took it from here. Well, we could shuffle at the end, but
Okay,
you
all right.
handle the rest of the votes, right?
I guess
You're
I
not
can.
going to give her the thing to bang it on?
Oh, that's right. I don't think I needed that yet. Okay, so, do we have a nomination for vice president?
I would like to move that we elect Andrea Gold for vice president.
Second?
All in favor? Okay, we need a nomination for clerk.
I'll nominate Matt Levy for clerk.
Second.
All in favor?
Passes 5-0.
And then we need a nomination for the vice clerk.
I nominate Erica Shames.
Second.
It's like, what, no second?
Yeah.
All right.
All in favor?
Passes 5-0.
Do we need to nominate Richard to be the member?
Okay, wait, you don't get to move that fast. No.
Wait, you know
All right, so Richard, on behalf of the board, we have a little something for you. Since you spent so much time supporting the district and providing us leadership and handling all the stuff that we need to have handled, we'd like to give this so that you and Richard could have a little time.
Thank you very much. So, and before we move, since we'll take the time now, I want to say thank you for allowing me to be the president for the past year. It's been very enlightening to see kind of the behind-the-scenes things in the district. I've enjoyed my weekly meetings and hearing everything that's going on. I would also be very remiss if I didn't say a huge thank you to Sandy, who keeps us on track and keeps us organized, and without whom we would be lost. Now can we shuffle?
You cannot wait to get in that seat, can
A little musical interlude.
Yeah.
Please take your name, please.
This used to be easier, right? We all had laptops. Oh, we're into that Apple PC thing. Because it's not on Apple.
All right, so the next order of business is we need to appoint a secretary to the board, which traditionally is the superintendent. If I could have
Do we nominate, do we have to?
motion.
Motion, okay.
A motion.
I move that we appoint Dr. Kugloff secretary to the board for 2014. I'll second.
All in favor?
Do we need to run any other nominations?
Passes 5-0.
Maybe Sandy.
All right. The next order of business is the board meeting calendar. Anybody have any changes, questions? All right. Can I have a
I'll move that we adopt the board meeting calendar for 2014.
Second. Oh, sorry.
All in favor?
Passes 5-0. Thank you.
Okay, next item of business is the board committee assignments.
Now, this one is a little tricky. What I provided for you was our current committee assignments. And as I wrote in a memo, there was information that we received over the year that we may want to do some revisions to our committee assignments, plus at the same time determine if board members want to keep their assignments or do some changing. So I recommend that we perhaps look at the modifications of the committees first, and then we could look at assignments second. How does that sound? So for modifications, we did talk about having a bond oversight committee of some sort. We had one during the modernization period and now no longer have one. It's a recommendation of the cabinet or staff that the audit review committee could serve in that format should the board feel that that's appropriate. Then Saving Pacifica Schools is no longer functioning as Saving Pacifica Schools. I believe that organization is going through a reorg and still looking at advocacy for education, but is changing its name and maybe a little bit of its area of emphasis. So at this time, I would recommend that we delete Saving Pacifica Schools from the committee assignments. And then lastly, we do have ad hoc committee Green Team, which was Cynthia Kaufman, our former trustee, who was chairing it. She is no longer chairing the Green Team, and we're thinking that Green Team activities, et cetera, is embedded in so many of the things that we do at the schools and through some of our various reports that we would be able to support the Green Team through that process as well. And Tina is serving as the lead for that. So I'm thinking that we will not need a representative or to have the Green Team as an ad hoc committee any longer. And so those are my 3 recommended changes and modifications. Are there any questions? Okay, so does that mean we all we support those changes? Okay.
That's fine.
Then with that, maybe do we want to go committee by committee to see if people want to make some changes or additions or modifications to the list?
Does anybody want to change their assignments?
How about,
I mean,
shall we go committee by committee, like strategic plan, who serves as liaisons? We haven't had a meeting yet, but will be probably in the near future, especially with the LCFF, and that's Joan and Andrea. Okay.
Anybody have any other interest? No? Okay.
Audit review committee is Matt Levy.
I'm good with staying on it.
No. Did you want to add another person to that one, though?
You could, if there's another.
If they're going to extend to also to bond oversight and stuff, should we
We'll
add another person to that, so it's a 2-person committee?
You can.
Is that agreeable?
And who, would anybody like to serve with that?
I can.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay, the Pacifica Education Foundation has been Matt.
I'm happy to stay on that.
Okay.
In terms of CPAC, unfortunately, they meet the same night as Terra Nova's PTO, so this past year I've only been able to attend one CPAC meeting, so if there's someone else who's interested in doing that.
When do they?
Yeah, when is the
It's the
meeting?
last Tuesday night of the month, from 7 to 8:30.
I might be able to do that sometimes, like, I can share CPAC if you want.
Okay, so.
Is that what you want to do that? Yeah, and that way.
Okay.
Is it always the same night as the PTO or just sometimes?
For the most part, it has been there, but there have been a few times where it wasn't. But
So a recommendation might be that we put Matt as the assigned person, and then you can ask Richard if you...
Then I can be an alternate.
Yeah, is that okay?
Sure.
And I'm not going to include alternate because that's really not a good practice to have. Okay. Then we'll go to the standing committee. Parcel Tax Oversight Committee has been Joan and Richard. Okay. Wellness Committee, Andrea Gold. Pacifica Collaborative, Eric Rashames. And thank you, Eric, because it is at a difficult time. It's in the morning, and, you know, so it's hard for many of us to get there. So is that okay, Eric, to continue? The PSD, Jefferson Union High School District, and the City of Pacifica, and I should include the Water District now, has been Eric and Richard.
I'd like to continue.
I'd like to continue, since we have some ongoing issues that we're partway into.
Okay. San Mateo County School Boards Association has been Matt.
I don't mind continuing. It hasn't really involved anything other than
Just
going to
attending.
their functions occasionally.
Mhm.
But I don't know that they expect any particular liaising from that position.
Some of these things were put on long ago so that we would begin to connect to
Mhm.
there was a time in which members of the board were not reaching outside the community, and I think, in the last 10 years, that's really shifted. So I think that's where that came from. Just to kind of keep contact with what's going on and check in.
Okay. Kent Awards, Richard Faust.
That's another thing that they never really contacted me for.
Well, and they just turned, it's really to make sure that I think a board attends the Kent Awards dinner and,
Well, there is another piece of that, and that is that when we have, when our district submits, then we also have somebody that goes and helps with the process of
of
this
somebody else's project.
selecting projects.
And we will have
Which
a,
I believe you did last year.
I did that this last year, and it was actually a great experience. So.
Yeah, it's a really fun experience.
So
you
I
like
wouldn't
to do
mind
that?
doing that,
Okay.
okay. So it'll be Andrea. And then governing board representative to the county committee on school district organization.
I went to that, a month ago. The once-a-year meeting, that's fine.
Is that okay? So Andrea's willing to continue. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I think this is an action item?
Yes, it is.
Move approval of the committee assignments as
Discussed?
discussed. Thank you.
I'll send it.
All in favor?
Passes by vote.
Okay. Next agenda item is the resolution for delegation of authority.
Okay, so this resolution really is something that we do on an annual basis. It delegates the authority from the Board of Trustees to the superintendent, and on the list of the resolution is the authority consistent with district laws and district rules. It allows us to accept the resignation, retirement, and hiring, approval of warrants, approval of district orders, non-public school, placement of special education students, sale of surplus personal properties at public auction, bid change orders of goods and services to accept work, acceptance of gifts, emergency action, policy implementation or administrative regulations, and revocation of prior delegations.
I need a motion to approve.
I move that we approve Resolution 2013-1211B.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Passes by vote.
Okay. We need approval of the minutes from November 20th.
I move we approve the minutes.
Second.
Any changes? All in favor?
Passes by vote.
Okay. All right, the next section is the approval of the agenda and the consent agenda. I would like to remove BP 3100 budget and AR 3100 budget for a future agenda item.
I move we approve the consent agenda as revised.
Second.
So consent agenda and the agenda?
And the agenda as
Second,
requested.
okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Passes 5-0.
All right. Communications. Well, that was a long one. All right. Communications. This portion of the agenda is available to the public to address the board on any issue that is not on the agenda. The maximum time allowed for any speaker is 3 minutes. LSEA? CSEA? People wishing to address the board? Okay. Correspondence? Board Superintendent Communications.
Awesome. I don't have to go first.
Since you're in the end of the seat. This is-
Well, it's actually been a slow couple of weeks. The only thing that I've had the opportunity to do was go on a tour of Pacifica.
Well, I'm sorry.
Wow.
At the CSBA conference, of course.
And we all did.
That we all did. All right. Eric?
The superintendent was courageous enough to take all 5 of us to San Diego, and so when she talks about span of control, you can tell that that was a serious error on her part. Just briefly, there were a few of the workshops that I went to. I know we're going to talk about this more in January at the work study session. A lot of good stuff. The 2 that were most interesting / terrifying were on the impact of the Affordable Care Act and the budget conversations. Some of the implications of what's coming are really going to be huge and are really going to take all of us in the district and all the labor groups and everybody to try and figure it out, because some of the stuff I'd not heard before, and I know Joan and I walked out of one session where they talked about come 2018, health plans that they consider Cadillac will be taxed, both by the employer and employee, which, some of our plans will fit that category, and I'd never heard that before. That was kind of a shocker. Impact on what's considered full-time, 30 hours a week will be considered full-time, which is going to impact our substitutes, and the reporting requirements that were onerous to the point where I think we're going to have to hire an additional person to work in the district office just to keep track of the reporting requirements for this year so that we can implement it next year. And just things that I think it's the law of unintended consequences. Big impact on the way we do our business, and I'm looking forward. I think in January when we talk about this in detail, about how we move forward and how we all get educated, because it was very disheartening to have these experts from the state and different, CDE and ask the questions. And they go, well, we don't know. The regulations are supposed to be out in March. It's like, so here we are forced to make decisions on programs, and they haven't even written rules yet. So it was somewhat sobering. Probably the only thing at the conference that was sobering. But that was my week. I won't tell stories about what anybody did.
Thank you.
Ted will talk later.
I got a new luggage tag.
And almost new luggage.
I hear I was at CSBA as well. And on a lighter note, I mean, the one thing that I would share from that was the second keynote speaker, who I think was very inspiring, because there was sort of this running thread through a lot of the sessions where people were getting beat up over PISA results that had come out the previous week, and a lot of the speakers were bashing people over the head with them. And this speaker, Dr. Young Zhao from the University of Oregon, said, if China was celebrating the fact that they had gotten first on this test, that would be one thing, but actually they don't believe that's anything to celebrate, because they feel that their method of education is beating the creativity out of kids, and they want to change that. He said, don't get too excited. He said, like, it's not that the American educational system instills creativity. We're just not as good at beating it out of people as the Chinese are. But still, like, I think that's, I think that keeping a one of the things that I think he really stressed that for me was really important is keeping a stress on a broad-based curriculum so that kids can find things that they're interested in, and sort of pushing the boundaries out as far as possible to keep people interested. And I thought that was something that we always need to keep in mind.
I too went to the CSBA conference, and it was very good, but just as last year, it was very overwhelming. There was a lot of information to take in and figure out and learn, but it was nice to be amongst a very large group of people who are very concerned about education, like-minded folks. So that was wonderful. And then when I got back, I got to hear Tom sing at the tree lighting, and that was just wonderful. So wanted to come down and see Tom and see the Cabrillo kids, take that other lighter side of things that are going on. And then we were at a work study on Mondays. Anybody remember that? I have my calendar out. That's why I remember we were all at a work study. So that was good. And but something else that I did that day was meet with I think 8 teachers from Qatar. I think is how they said it. Qatar. I always thought it was Qatar, but they don't say Qatar. They say Qatar. Okay. And that was it's part of this group called ICSME down in Half Moon Bay. But these educators are facing the same things that we are, as far as new standards and improving what they do. And so it was very nice to talk about the commonalities, and that these teachers would really like to form alliances with us, and so this might be something that we could put out to the schools as far as pen pals and a sharing of culture from California to the Middle East. They're very willing to do this kind of stuff, so we could talk about that at some point.
Yeah. Well, see, so we've been together the last 5 out of the last 6 days. All right, good company. Just so that folks know, on the January 15th work study is the CSBA report out, so that's when each of the board members will bring back so that we could all share as a group what we heard, and allow some discussion about what future things we might need to think about or move forward with depending on what we heard and we learned. So that'll be part of the work study on the 15th, if anybody would like to join us. I attended the health and welfare with the Obamacare. Yeah, it was pretty scary. I got a few more gray hairs out of that one. And then Richard and I also attended one regarding how big what is the right size for your district, and what is the right size for reserves. And school services has done they've actually done some new kind of different, it was the first time they've done something like this, was really looking in depth at finances and organizations for districts. And it sprung out of the fact that over all these years we've had all these cuts, and we've made a lot of decisions based on how the state's been yo-yoing us around, and now as districts are trying to figure out what the impact of that is, and then switch with Common Core and LCFF and all of those things, and what the new dynamics of the budget process works and all of that. It's going to take a big shift in thinking from what we've done in the past. So those are two ones that definitely would like to share out with the board what was heard, so that you are all informed.
And so I too had the opportunity to go with the trustees to the CSBA conference. We all kind of, it's a very organized process. Everybody picks different areas, and so we don't overlap too much, and we get a broad perspective of what's out there throughout the state and nation. The one thing that I do want to share and take away as a takeaway from the audience is the fact that we do have 5 trustees who are extremely committed to educating our children and learning as much as possible in relationship to what's new fiscally, budgetarily, programmatically. How do we meet the needs of our students? How do we create safe learning environments? Because this is our opportunity of professional development. And I thank them for taking out 3 days of their week to do this learning and this professional learning that is so very important, I think. I think many of the superintendents are very jealous of me because when I see my colleagues out there, they'll ask who came from your district, and I can say all 5, and not many can. And so again, I thank you all for doing all of that for us and providing that time and effort into giving back to Pacifica School District. The other thing I'd like to do is to thank Richard. This will be my opportunity to say thank you for spending this last year with me as board president. It is very helpful to have people who we can talk to and bounce ideas off of and get great guidance from. And Richard, you have been a wonderful resource, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I want to say one more thing. I guess I'm board president, so I can.
You can do whatever you want.
This year's, this was my 9th or 10th conference, and this year was a lot about trying to figure out what the future looks like. But in the past conferences that I've been to, one of the things that I always had a takeaway was we'd go to see something, and then I could sit there and go, yeah, we do that, we do that, we do that. Oh, we might be able to do that a little better. Yes, we do that, we do that. And it always is, another piece I always get is, I walk away feeling good about our district and where we are, and when we talk to other board members and they're asking us for cards, what are you doing, can we contact you, that sounds like a good idea. It's actually kind of a validation from an external source about how well our district is functioning. And that's a tribute to every single person sitting in this room, working in our schools, to our community who supports us, our nonprofits, our PTOs, our Pacific Education Foundation, Saving Pacifica Schools work, Pacifica School Volunteers. We are very fortunate to be in a situation where we're looking to make things just a little teeny bit better or navigate difficult times, as opposed to what I see in other districts. It's like, oh my gosh, we have so much work to do. So I just would like to share that publicly for my last 11 years of experience. Richard?
And if I could, I had actually wanted to say the same thing. Since all of you are here tonight, you won't necessarily be at our January 15th meeting of how proud I am to be a part of this district. When I go to all these conferences and I sit and I say the same thing, oh, we already do that, or we've been doing these things for years, and I've already had opportunity to email out to several folks across the state and CC them on plans and board policies and things that we have already done or had in place that they were curious about and will use to help them, guide them in making their own decisions. So I think it's great to be a part of all of this.
Okay. All right, now we have to do some district business. Certification of the first interim report. Josie?
Okay, this is the first interim, which covers the time period for July 1st through October 31st. It's an update on our budget, and we are presenting tonight a positive first interim, which means the district will be able to meet its obligations for the current fiscal year and projecting out 2 years moving forward. So the first interim is much more accurate than the budget that the board approved in June, because the state revenues were not known at that time. We were still using the old revenue limit formula back in June, and also we didn't have the actual staffing in place. And so over the summer, we've been able to revise the budget and bring you now a more accurate reflection of our budget. It does include the local control funding formula. That was the format that was suggested by FICMAT, which is the Fiscal Crisis and Management Assistance Team, because the state actually hasn't come out with the actual numbers for the local control funding formula. And just so that you're aware, the state is still funding us cash flow-wise on the old funding formula. And so until the P2, which is in April, the state will not be able to catch up on funding. So we're still receiving it under the old formula, just kind of an FYI, until the state gets the actual figures up and running in April. And that's the same time when they'll provide us guidance for our LCAP plan. So the first interim budget does have reserves of 7.6% plus a 2.7% in Fund 17, which is our special reserve fund. And that is comprised of 3% of economic uncertainty. And then we had discussed with the board about reserves, and we'll have more discussion now in our January study session when we report back from CSBA, but we talked about increasing reserves. And so this first interim does include a 0.5% increase to the reserve for economic uncertainty of $125,000. And then there is still an unallocated amount of just over $1 million in the general fund. So one thing to point out is that Proposition 30 that was passed last year was not new funding for the school district. It was actually just to prevent budget cuts last year. And so the state did put those funds in what's called an education protection account, and there's restrictions on how those funds are to be used. The board did approve a plan, which is posted on our website for the education protection account. And just to note that Proposition 30, the sales tax and the personal income taxes, the increases will start expiring in 2016. So from 2016 to like 2000, I think it was 1920, you're looking at decreases in revenue when Proposition 30 starts expiring. So unless the state comes up with a plan for backfilling those funds, then we could be facing some uncertainty in those years. For example, in 2016, we'll be losing $34 per student. And when you get to 2019-20, we'll be losing up to $405 per student. So that's one of the things when we work on our study session to talk about multi-year planning is if the state doesn't have a plan for backfilling those funds, then the district should start working on a plan in the event that we lose the Proposition 30 funds. Let's see what else. We talked about the reserves, what school services recommended and what the CDE recommended, and I know we're going to carry those discussions forward in January. The multi-year projection does use the new LCFF formula, and so when you look at the multi-year, and the packet's it's a few hundred pages, but it is in there. It shows revenues projected of a $900,000 increase next year, and then another $950,000 increase the following year. So those are all in the multi-year. And the other funds are all projected to have positive ending fund balances. We will continue the discussions in February when the January's governor proposal comes out.
Okay. Go ahead. No. Go ahead. No, you go first.
No, I just wanted to point out, since I know that Board Policy 3100 came up in the issue of reserves, and I just wanted to sort of make sure that everybody understood that for this year, 125,000 or 0.5% is what, after some discussion we decided was doable and not excessive, and that, we understand that the policy has like a very grand goal for where we would get to one day, but that we wanted, maybe, who knows, but that certainly was nothing that anybody expected we would do like overnight or even close to it, in the same way that the state has said that they will restore our 2007 funding in 2021, like maybe sometime in 2057 we might get there, but that we do consider like adding a little bit to reserves would be useful.
Well, and to that point, they probably haven't taken into account cost of living adjustments and CPI and all of those things. So just getting to 2007 funding at that point is not going to be what we need at that point. Josie, I was actually a little surprised that we're still being deferred by the state.
Yes.
When LCFF
LCFF.
LCFF starts, will the deferrals be done then?
Not for this year.
Not for this year, but-
They've been able to pay back some of the state deferrals, and those are the funds that the state actually owes us, and it's counted in the revenues, but they don't pay us until July, August, September. So last year, it was about 4.5 million. This year, we don't know the exact amount yet until the state converts in April, but we are prepared to get a loan in March in the event that we need it. And it could be like in the $3 to $4 million range. I don't have the exact figure yet, but we are still getting deferrals.
Okay. So what did the loan cost us last year?
It's $20,000 of issuance costs.
Okay.
When you have to get the loan, and then you have interest costs of, you know, the county's making payroll, and we don't have the funds, so you're losing interest as well. So there is a cost of the borrowings.
Okay, so if we could get our cash flow situation in a better state, we could recoup the 20, I mean, we wouldn't have to expend that 20,000 and we might actually have a little income. Okay.
And again, I just want to add that Jerry Hill did come to a meeting with the superintendents, and that discussion did occur regarding the need for us to borrow for cash flow issues, so he will be looking into that as well.
Do we still need to have a conversation around the ERAF triple flip disaster again?
And that was part of that conversation.
Part of that conversation, okay. For people who don't know what that was, there were several, when they did all this juggling around, it created a situation where 7 districts in San Mateo County, including ours, received 0 payroll taxes, zero property taxes. So we were completely 100% dependent on the state and had to get an emergency cash infusion from them until they figured out exactly what was going on. And has caused us to do these fiscal year,
Cross fiscal year.
cross fiscal year loans, which are very difficult to get since your collateral is your property taxes. So it's something we need to keep our eye on and make sure that that kind of gets fixed so we never go back there again. All right, this is an action item. We need approval for the certification of the first interim report.
I move that the board approve the positive certification of the first interim financial report.
Second.
All in favor?
Passes by vote.
All right. The next agenda item is the resolution for Bright Schools program. Wendy?
Okay.
Josie, sorry.
Bright Schools was brought to us by the California Energy Commission, and it is with good timing with Proposition 39 for the energy efficiency funds that we're going to be receiving. Bright Schools will provide up to $20,000 of energy-related technical services, and that would be items such as energy audits, you know, like the PG&E type audits. And so the County Office of Ed has been assisting us with working through this Proposition 39 process and the funding, and they've recommended that we go ahead and move forward with Bright Schools to start some of these energy audits and such so that we can kind of see where we're at and how we can start planning for Proposition 39 funding.
Questions, discussion? Okay. I need a motion. Yes.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Passes by vote.
All right, and then we're down to the last, sometimes the hardest, future agenda items. I didn't hear anything that we weren't already on our agenda. Anything staff needs? Board?
Yeah, there were a few things that I wanted to maybe ask that we consider putting on board items. One is technology. A lot of, I think that we should maybe, I realize that everything is not set in stone, but since I think this year we do have money budgeted to start upgrading labs for SBAC, maybe now would be a good time to start publicizing those plans for how things are going to go forward. We had talked about maybe having updates on how math instruction was proceeding this year, since I know that's been an area of focus. And then lastly, for us to maybe consider at some point a work study between, where we would invite PEF and the PTOs to kind of discuss how things were going to shake out and what functions maybe the district would consider, is looking at taking off and is already taking off, and maybe have sort of a wider discussion around what the other organizations should be doing from now on. I know that, and I don't mean to imply that you're not already having these discussions. Like I know you are. I just think that like it would be a good idea to have a wider discussion that we could see.
Would that be in addition to the March 12th meeting with PEF?
Yes, because what that particular item is really just for them to present what they have accomplished over this last year. And what I'm hearing from Matt is really a broader perspective of, I think, and the PTOs have expressed it, and I will be meeting with PEF Board, I think in January, to kind of talk about, now that we are taking on some responsibility with the technology, how does that look for the various organizations to work together and emphasize? So I think that that'd be a worthwhile session. We might want to wait until after we get the January governor's budget and see where we're going, but we definitely can do that. And usually what I do is I'll work with the board president in relation to these requests and then see how we can infuse it in our agenda.
Okay. Anything else? Meeting adjourned. At 7:43.